I've only been saying I was going to do this video for, what was it? 10 months? A year? Well, it's finally here, ladies and gentlemen. This is Barbara, and I'm going to be doing not necessarily a doll review, but a doll action figure comparison. This is an action figure. This is the latest in the Integrity Toys FR Home line. This is old school FR Home. And then right here is a fresh doll. Now, I should tell you that each of the gentlemen are wearing ensembles that were made to fit FR Home. And since I am most familiar with Integrity Toys and their men, I thought I would go with that baseline just to show you how the clothes would look and fit. So this is an unofficial Prince William, also known as the Duke of Cambridge. And he is wearing, by the way, an ensemble. Whoops. He's wearing an ensemble that was made exclusively for R&D, or Rudy Terrell's doll business. It's not a terribly complicated look. It's a gray patterned suit, trousers and jacket with a sleeveless turtleneck. As you can see, it looks a bit awkward on him on this action figure because he has an elongated neck, which is usually one of the big signs of an action figure, is that they're going to have a longer neck than a fashion doll. They're also going to have a lot more posability, which you will see when I actually show them side by side and we start to do the measurements. As I said, this is a fresh doll in an outfit made for fashion royalty. This was made by Chewin a long time ago. I almost want to say this is a 10-year-old outfit. The shoes he's wearing are action figure shoes, and I just thought they worked really well with this look and with the doll. And as you can see again, there's just little things that are off. The trousers are a bit too long. The sleeves, you can argue, might be a bit too long. But this actually fits him very well, especially in the chest and around the neck. Now, this is where things get interesting. Oops. More interesting than I meant them to. This is Perry. And he is part of that original Fashion Royalty Home line. Again, these ensembles were made for the current run of FR men or color infusion men. And interestingly enough, the shirt fits him beautifully, but the trousers do not. I can't get them up and over his hips. I can't close them. So very interestingly, I think that's one very big hint to what we're going to be seeing in terms of the fit around the torso and the hips. The last gentleman who I'm going to leave sitting on the couch is the very recently reviewed Noah Faraday, who is the latest in the Fashion Royalty Home, now called Monarchs line. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to relatively undress these guys. And by that I mean I'm going to put them in skivvies. And we're going to go one by one with measuring tape to show you. And at this point I will have to put them on a stand to show you just where the different measurements are. So let's pause here while I get that set up. All right, So I think what I will do is I will start with Integrity Toys, since, let's face it, the majority of my reviews are from IT. I just want to very quickly say two things. One, everybody, all the gents are wearing underwear because I'm never sure with YouTube how much doll nudity they will allow. And when there is definition, I think it's better to be safe than sorry, so I decided to put them all in briefs. So let's start with Perry Merino. Okay. Ordinary tape measure, by the way. His neck, which is actually a pretty important measurement if you do like a turtleneck. His neck has a circumference of just under 3 inches. His shoulder, his torso, the upper torso from shoulder to shoulder is, again, a little bit more, is a little bit less than 3 inches. Under the breastbone and around, it is, I would say, 5 3/4 inches. Where his natural waist is, though there is no waist joint on Perry, he comes in at 4 3/4. And where the hips would be is 5 3/4. To stay with the torso just for another minute, note please that he does have a shoulder joint, an elbow joint, and a wrist joint. His hands used to come out, but I'm not going to play too much with it because I've honestly had Perry away for a while, so I don't want the chance that he got tight. I don't want to break anything. He also seems to have a pen mark on him. How the hell did I do that? Oh well. Okay. From his shoulder to the tip of his finger is 5 3 is really too close. It's about 5 5/8, 5 7/8, 5 7/8. Okay. Now there is a joint at the leg here, the very top of the thigh, which is where I'm going to start the leg measurement from. The proper leg itself, not from the leg to the waist to the feet, but the proper leg itself is 7 3/4. If I go ahead and do it from the waist to the foot, it is, let me try this again. Make sure I read that right the first. From the actual top of the thigh to the bottom of the foot is, I'm going to go ahead and revise that to 7 1/2. And then you go from the natural waist to the bottom of the foot, it's just at 8 inches. Why does that make a difference? It makes a difference in terms of where you want the trousers to fit. If you're somebody who makes clothes for dolls and action figures, that makes a difference. Again, to do, let's say, shorts or Bermuda shorts, from the waist to the knee is 5 1/2 inches. From the knee to the foot is just a little bit over 4. Okay. Now, if you were to make gloves, now you don't, with Perry's hands, you really can't because the fingers are pretty much molded together, so they would be mitts. But the hand itself, from the wrist joint to the tip of the fingers, comes in at 1.5, and the foot is just under 1.5, and it could go to 1.5 if you bulk it up with socks. I'm not sure. I mean, I'll do a head measurement in case you're somebody who makes hats. But that's really, really tricky too, because that's based on how much hair and product. But again, this hair is pretty much down now. So this is 4.5. Now, just to go again quickly, there is a not so much a neck joint as there is a joint at the top of what would be, you know, at the top of the neck. There's a joint just so he can turn his head a little bit. He has shoulders, he has elbows, he has wrists. The torso is a solid piece, but for this breast piece here that allows it to sway side to side. At the leg, he has a knee joint. He has a limited ankle joint, which will not allow for a whole lot of movement or in terms of action poses. And if he wanted to grip his hand or something like that, he would need his other set of hands. Let's go ahead now, take a look at Noah. And I'm going to say there's about a decade between Noah and Perry. Okay. So I am not going to, well, actually I could do Noah if I go right by the forehead. So let's start from the tippy top and do Noah's by the forehead and try to go under his hair. That's also 4.5. His neck is 3. To go shoulder to shoulder is just under 3.5. To measure him under his breastbone, it is 5.5. He has the shoulder joints, he has elbow joints, he has a wrist joint, and these hands do come out. And if you check my other review, you can see that. Now, comparing the two guys, Perry to Noah, they both have a 6-pack. Noah's is a little more defined. I don't know if that's because I just got Noah out of the box, Perry is 10 years old, or they just took a little more time to define him. That is about all I'm going to do there, because unlike the rest of these dolls, Noah has a good deal of definition. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Going to Noah's waist. Noah's waist is 4 3/4. His hips are just under 6. From the top of what would be the leg, as opposed from the leg to from the waist to the foot, but from the actual leg, which is here, and I can't really roll this up too far. It's 7.5. From the waist, it's 8 1/4. The thigh to the knee is just over 3 inches. The knee to the foot is 4.5. The foot is 1.5. The flat hand, and this one, if you are crazy but crazy talented, you could actually, with Noah's hands, do a proper glove. That's 1.5 from wrist to the tips of his fingers. I've just realized there's the inseam measurement, which I know you need for pants. So I'll do it on Noah really fast, and then I'll go back to Perry and do it. And I'll do it obviously in the right order with the rest of the guys. It is roughly 6 inches. Now, if you're a seamstress or a tailor in the 1/6 scale, you're going to have a better measuring tape. It's just literally just under 6 inches on Noah. On Perry, it is again just under 6 inches. Now this is where we're going to start. Now I'm also going to do the fresh doll. These came on the market roughly 18 months ago. So starting from the very top, and again, trying not to get the hair involved, because the hair will throw it off depending on the thickness of the hair. This one is hard. Because the good news is it's a very well-rooted doll. The bad news is I can't get underneath it to get the right measurement. Hang on. I think I got it. It's just under 4 inches, and it might actually be closer to 3 3/4 because I had to sort of really dig in there and try to get underneath, and I'm not sure if I did that right. This next is going to be a lot easier. His neck is just over 3 inches. Oops, just over 3 inches. Shoulder to shoulder. And there is no, by the way, if you notice, this is one solid torso. There is no breast joint, and there is no neck. There's a swivel up here. There is no neck joint. Shoulder to shoulder. It's just under 3. It's actually, I'm not even going to say that. It's 3 1/4. Under the breast is 6. The waist is 5 1/4. The hips are 5 3/4. And his arm, which as you notice will have the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist joint. His arm is 4 3/4. His hand is 1 1/2. From the waist to the foot, it is 6 1/2. from the upper thigh to the foot. Sorry. I should have said, I'm sorry, from the waist to the foot, it is 7.5. From the thigh to the foot, it comes in just under 7. His inseam is 5 7/8. From the thigh to the knee, I'm sorry, from the waist to the knee is 3 7/8. From the knee to the foot is 4 inches. The foot is 1 1/4. So his feet are a bit smaller. I can't remember if I did his hand or not, so I'll do the hand again. The hand is 1 1/2. And just very quickly, a couple of things to know about action figures, just in general. Because they have action, you're going to have a lot of differences in terms of what they're going to look like. You're going to have a very weird neck joint to allow for maximum head movement. So for example, here, you have a very long neck, which is going to throw off if you do a turtleneck. But you also have here what looks like, you know, it's almost like you're tailoring it to do like spaghetti strap undershirts. I don't want to call them what they're usually called. There is some definition, like he would have muscle, but it's much more. You have a lot more movement. You have at the shoulder, you have just underneath the shoulder, you have at the elbow, you have at the wrist, maximum movement throughout the arm, which you have to account for in terms of how you're going to fit the clothes. This is for a lot of action figures. You have a very defined, not at the breast, but just below it, you have a joint. You have a second very well-defined waist joint, which is going to in fact impact how the clothes fit. You're going to have a knee joint, which isn't so different from the other knee joints, but then getting down to the ankle, depending on how the action figure is made, you may have a foot that goes directly into the ankle as a peg, or you may have a joint which allows for maximum movement. You might even in some cases have a foot that can flex. If you notice, the toes can flex on him. I have a couple of action figures like that. I have seen, I don't have any in my collection right now, but I have seen action figures whose torsos are larger than Noah's. I have seen, I've also seen, they're now starting to make action figures. Not that you would buy a suit that would make them look heavy, but they're actually sculpted to be bigger. So all of this is to say, when you are buying clothes for an action figure, they'll tell you that this is made for a doll or an action figure that is narrow-shouldered, which this would be considered a narrow shoulder because the shoulder itself is down lower than the neck as opposed to being parallel, or broad-shouldered where you would have a bit more here. You would also really have to pay attention to the length, and you would also have to pay attention to the shoes that come with it. As I said, the feet have a joint and they can come off. And there are some shoes that are made for action figures that you pull the feet off and the feet peg directly into an ankle peg. Integrity Toys has never done something like that. Mattel has never done something like that. I don't see them doing something like that. But when you're looking, if you have an action figure and you see that there are shoes that are made and they have this hole where the heel should be, that means it's a shoe that's not really a shoe. It's just meant to plug directly into the ankle. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and measure this poor Prince William. Oh well. He's got a hole. Yeah, he's so poor. He's got a freaking kingdom to himself. Anyway, Prince William's crown is 4 inches. His neck is literally just under 3. To measure from shoulder to shoulder, it is 3 7/8. Even though I'm measuring a little bit lower, I am measuring it at the breast joint, and it is 5.5. You can see the waist joint here because it's harder to get, because his hips are a little more defined. But at the waist joint, it's 5 inches. His hips are, which is where this underwear is kind of falling, his hips are 6. From the waist joint to the foot is 7 1/8, but keep in mind this also has an exaggerated ankle. So this is where you, again, and I want to impress upon you, when you're dealing with action figures, you have to look very carefully at the ankle, because some of them are going to have this exaggerated ankle here. Some of them will have a much more traditional ankle, and that will make a difference in how you cut the trouser. From the thigh to the foot is 6 3/8. From the thigh to the knee is 3.5. From the knee to the foot is 4. The foot, remember again, this is a flex foot, but the foot is, to be a little more gentle, the foot is 1.5. And his inseam is 5 3/4. This time, when you measure the arm, you're gonna bring it up almost to where this would kind of like what the shoulder would be, but it doesn't really show the shoulder. This is 5 7/8, and his hand is 1.5. Where the problem usually is, if it's in the length of the inseam, and it's going to be in the torso. The traditional torso here is 3 3/8. On Noah, who does not have that separation, his is 4. On Perry, who has a slightly different, his is actually 3. And I haven't named him yet, so that's why. The Fresh Dolls guy, I haven't given him a proper name yet. I gotta do that. Contemplate. His is just over 3. So this is where you really start to see problems, is in the length of the torso and the length of the leg. When does that become a problem? It becomes a problem when you have a shirt that closes with hook and eye, and you can't get the hook and eye to go across the chest. It becomes a problem when you have a shorter shirt and it can't tuck into the waistline. It becomes a problem when you have trousers and you have a dress shoe and the length of the trouser is, you think it's too short. And it's too short because you can't get it to go all the way down to the pants. Now, sometimes you can trick it. If you remember, I showed you earlier, there are some shoes that are really great. A pair like this is completely malleable plastic. It did come with an action figure outfit some time ago. I wish I could tell you guys which one it was. It is a real shoe. You slip it on. It's very soft, so it's easy to get on any foot. And because you have the raised, it's a bootlet, you can trick it, especially with darker pants, which is why you wouldn't put this with khakis anyway. So you can sometimes trick it with the shoes, or you can put them in work boots and nobody would notice. But you certainly have to be thinking about that. So what is the take home from this? The take home is there's always tricks that you can do. If you remember, I had said that Perry couldn't get into, that I couldn't close the pants on Perry and I had the shirt out. Well, if I hadn't told you that, you wouldn't have known. Unless you're someone who like really has a sharp eye and could tell that the pants were loose. You can put a sweater over pants that don't quite close. You can, if you don't quite like the way the shirt looks, you put a jacket over it. Or if the jacket doesn't seem to be fitting quite right, don't close the jacket or just have the jacket over his sleeve, over his shoulder. There are different ways you could trick it. But most of the clothes that are out now, except for the figures that are made to have what they call the dad bod, the dolls that are made to look like they have a pouch, they have some weight to them, or they're really muscular. Then there are those bodies, I don't have them at all. There are some male bodies that are extremely muscular, and you really have to look for the clothes that are specifically made for them. But if you're working with Integrity Toys, Fresh Dolls, and the traditional narrow-shouldered, regular posability action figure like Prince William is, you should be able to go through the clothes pretty easily and switch them off with some give and take. Now, what can you get that's not $1,000,000? Fresh Dolls, right now, not $1,000,000, very reasonably priced. And Ken dolls, which I actually do not have any of right now. But Fresh Dolls right now, in terms of not hard to get your hands on, especially if you have a Walmart near you, which 99% of the world does, Fresh Dolls are the best to get, and in terms of quality and posability, they're the ones to get. Sometimes you can get lucky with action figures, and you can get bodies without a head really cheap. You'd have to look on eBay and Amazon for them. And then you just buy the head separately, and the heads are not terribly difficult to pop on and off. You would, depending on the neck joint. But those bodies, even, they tend to go between 40 and 50. Some of the really well-made ones that are very posable and very durable, they'll go up to the 60, 70 line. And then you have Fashion Royalty and the Homes and, Poppy's Boyfriend Chip and the Color Infusion crew and the New Face people. Those bodies, those dolls, not as posable, not as flexible, and they are very, very expensive. A single doll will usually run above $125, and if they're in a gift set, they're going to be pushing the $200 mark. So you really have to think about what you want to do, and do you want the entire package? Do you want just the nude doll, and then you'd be willing to split it with somebody and they'll take the clothes? That's something I do a lot, but that's up to you. I don't think I really have any, I don't think I have really any other advice for you or anything else to tell you, except that if you are going to start to look for clothes, you can always ask the seller what body, if they don't tell you what body it's made for, and they usually do, ask them. Tell them that you have a particular action figure, and maybe they can help you out with that. Can't hurt to ask. So I hope this has been helpful for you, particularly when it comes to looking at the difference between the old home and the new home. I'm Barbara, and I will see you in my next review, which may yet still be yet another Monarch, if all goes according to shipping plans. I will talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.